Hi, I'm Corey Wayne, and today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to do a little bit of commentary on kind of public people in the public and things that are going on in their relationship that's very public. And so I thought something was interesting came up the last few days, which was Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is always speaking out about vaccines and things. And so his wife came out and just absolutely roasted him in the media about some of his views. And one of the things that I've learned, and especially if you're going to be in a long-term relationship or you're going to be married or you're going to be exclusive with somebody as a man, you want a woman that's on your team that has the same goals and values. Because if she doesn't support what you do for a living, if she doesn't support your purpose, your model of the world, and want to be your biggest fan and cheerleader and help you accomplish it. In other words, if she's working against you or she's not supportive, then she's the wrong woman for you. You have to have people in your inner circle, not only your intimate relationships, but your personal relationships with people that jive with you. They have similar goals, similar values, and they're not working against you. So why don't you tell us about the story and what she said and what actually happened?
Of course, but before we get into the drama, let's rewind and talk about who Robert F. Kennedy is before getting into that. So, according to the Daily Beast, they labeled Robert F. Kennedy as the world's leading anti vax conspiracy theorist. He spoke at the Defeat the Mandates rally in Washington, D.C. So, he appeared at this event, and it was a rally that was against COVID vaccines and mandates. So, as a speaker, he had a few thoughts about the vaccine mandates and kind of compared it to something he shouldn't have. So, quote, he said, even in Hitler's Germany, you could cross the Alps into Switzerland. You can hide in the attic like Anne Frank did. He continues to say, quote, today the mechanisms are being put in place that will make it so none of us can run. None of us can hide, end quote. So this outrageous comparison was immediately condemned by a Twitter account, which belonged to do you know how to pronounce this memorial place and museum, Corey?
Auschwitz-Birkenau Memorial Place and Museum.
Yes. Now, this museum was established in 1947, and it was to preserve the memories of the lost and what happened to them in the concentration camps during the Holocaust.
Yeah, he shouldn't have referred to Anne Frank that way because obviously people that are of Jewish descent are going to get upset at that. But I understand his thinking. He's basically saying that, I mean, as Mussolini said, fascism is the perfect merger of state and corporate interests. Like what Klaus Schwab likes to talk about is a public and private partnership, a partnership between people and government and private people and businesses, which is in essence fascism, corporate fascism, if you will. And his argument, where he seems to be coming from, is that what you see in government today with the different pharmaceutical companies and their relationships with people in government, you in essence have the same thing. And one of the things that we're allowed in the United States, because we have a First Amendment right, the right to free speech, and that's him exercising his free speech to basically say, hey, I'm questioning the efficacy. He's questioning the results, the lockdowns, the vaccines, and he's been very vocal over the years about different vaccines, and so he's always been, at least by people on the left, they label him as a conspiracy theorist. But he's making the case, or trying to make the case, that with the lockdowns, the vaccine pass, the digital, I mean, you're basically creating a way where you can digitally monitor people. You can turn off their phone, you can turn off their bank account. I mean, even when you look at the vaccine passes, you can't go in restaurants and certain places without them. You basically can't be a part of society. And so the argument he's making is that you're separating the good people from the bad people. And And when you look at history, when you look at what happened in Nazi Germany, or any place where totalitarianism, like Venezuela, you've got the people that comply with the government wishes are the good people, and the people that don't are the bad people. And eventually you demonize the bad people enough, and then eventually you've weakened the bad people and isolate them, and then you go after them with physical force. And it's been done all throughout history. Every dictator has done it. Every communist dictatorship, fascist, they all did it. And they eventually, another reason why the founding fathers instituted and put in the Constitution the Second Amendment, that all the people are supposed to have guns. The militia are in fact the people themselves, as they referred to it in their writings. Their intent was that everybody's supposed to have a gun. Therefore, if you ever get called up for militia duty, you got a weapon, you know how to use it. And even the U.S. Code, the law is all people, all males 17 through 35 or 40 or something like that are supposed to be ready for militia duty if they're called up. It's actually the law. And that's the reason why the people have it is we have the right to self-defense, and that's against people who would harm us. But also, their writings also was as a last resort to protect ourselves against tyranny. And one of the other things that dictators always do is they always disarm the population. Like one of the things the Nazis did is after they took power, it's like, hey, unless you work for the government or you're part of the police force or whatever, there's no reason for you to have a gun. You don't need it. So you got to turn it in or else we'll lock you up. Hugo Chavez did the same thing, and I think it was 2012, outlawed private gun ownership. And the people say, oh, well, only the government and the police should have guns. Well, it's like once you give the government a monopoly on force, if you don't do the things that the people in government want, they send people with guns to force you to do what they want. And so he's making the case that, I mean, everything's digital these days. It's like you can't hop on a plane and go fly somewhere else. You can't, if you don't have access to your banking. You see people getting debanked these days, or the bank just says, hey, you got 30 days, get your money out of our bank. We don't want to do business with you. And you just create the conditions where you just see where it goes, because when you look at what tyrants have done, they always do these things. They take more and more power away to where basically the people that don't comply are powerless, and the state can force them to do whatever they want. And so anytime somebody throws out something to do with the Holocaust, which people on the left and the right do that stuff all the time. I mean, when Trump was in office, they always referred to him as a fascist. Trump is Hitler. When Bush was in office, they referred to him as Bush Hitler. And so back to Kennedy, he's making the case that he sees these same parallels. And so he's calling it out. But obviously, he shouldn't have used the Holocaust, because it's like the third rail. You don't touch the third rail, because it was just such a horrendous thing what happened that people shouldn't flippantly talk about those things. And quite frankly, it's in our culture these days, the Holocaust is just thrown around constantly whenever any side wants to label their opponent as like Hitler or like the fascists.
Yeah, because Twitter went crazy. All the fans, well, I don't even know fans, but most of the comments.
When doesn't Twitter go crazy, though? To be honest,
it always
it's like millions of people yelling at the clouds all day, basically.
Yeah.
in message, they couldn't even do all caps, and it's like they're yelling. Choo! But that's what happened next. Twitter got crazy, and there was one Twitter user who tagged Kennedy's wife, actress Cheryl Hines, saying, quote,
"You need to make a statement.
Do you stand with your husband? ? Very interesting. So she didn't answer right away, and she broke her silence the following day. And on Monday evening, she wrote on Twitter, quote, my husband's opinions are not a reflection of my own. While we love each other, we differ on many current issues. Another user replied to Hines' response and said, quote, how about this? No one should compare anything to the horrors of the Holocaust. My husband was wrong to do so, end quote. And then Hines then replied, yes, I agree with you. So she agreed to this statement, which kind of made her look bad also. I would say, in a way. And it didn't show support from the wife.
Everybody went after the wife, especially people,
Nobody's
on the
ever
right
happy.
and in
It's
the
never
middle,
enough.
saying
It's
she's not supporting her husband. But the reality is, the way he phrased it was inappropriate. I think most people would agree on that.
Yeah.
So it was inartfully said.
Yeah.
So I'm paying attention to different. This is kind of separated from the story a little bit, but I feel like whenever there's this big, like the outcry, people, it's not really a big people. It's always from a small people that really outcry. Even if you concede to them, it's never enough. They're always like
The squeaky wheel always gets the oil.
yeah, it's never like I don't know. This is just what I've noticed in the last 5-10 years, just throughout the internet, anything on, even socially. See, if you even concede to the people, it's still never enough. And I think that's a lot of people.
Yeah, you don't apologize to the rage mob because they always want more.
Because it doesn't solve the problem. You're still having the issue. I think, and a lot of people, yeah. That's okay. Let's get a little more back on topic. But I see that as very prevalent. Like,
yeah, it's also inappropriate for the Daily Beast to be saying he's a conspiracy theorist. I mean, at the end of the day, the Daily Beast gets stuff wrong all the time. So you could say, well, Daily Beast is a conspiracy theorist magazine.
Yeah, the
news outlet.
Honestly, the term conspiracy theorist is just labeled and thrown around.
Yeah,
all the
anytime
time.
they want to delegitimize somebody, they just call them a conspiracy theorist.
But honestly, I think nowadays more people are realizing, oh, maybe he's actually on to something then. Because a lot of the so-called conspiracy theorists have been right.
At the end of the day, if truth is truth, it needs no explanation. If something, we have every right as Americans to question the legitimacy of the things people in government, people in power, people in the media tell us. And if they're being honest with us, their evidence should easily back up what they're saying. When they just start labeling people and attacking them and calling them names and stuff, then obviously that's typically what somebody does when they can't defend their argument.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. If you just question anything, you're labeled a conspiracy theorist, which is...
And so most people hear that. It's like the UFO thing. All the things that I heard and read and studied about with UFOs, but that person's a conspiracy theorist.
Oh, yeah, they're just...
And it was all part of government propaganda, because the truth was out there all along, but there was a lot of government disinformation that was put out there, like people like Nick Pope, who used to run the program for the British government, that helped put out the misinformation. So that's people couldn't connect the dots because you have the truth out there, but you get all this other bullshit, made up stuff, and it's like trying to figure out what's truth. Oh, it's conspiracy theory. So when you can't figure out what the truth is, maybe it is conspiracy because we can't figure out what's up, what's down. And then now, at this day and age, in the last year, the government has acknowledged, the United States government, it's been the New York Times, that hey, by the way, we're in possession of crashed spaceships that are not constructed on Earth. Have a nice day, and back to your regularly scheduled programming. And so we have finally acknowledgement that this stuff has all been going on all these decades, and they knew about it, and they've been lying to us ever since.
So how much about what else are they lying about or keeping secret? Lying by omission with.
So when I see an outlet like this that I know the Daily Beast, they lean left, like far left, and they're conspiracy theorists. It's that's the kind of thing you go, if they're saying it, well, maybe there is something to what this guy's saying. But at the end of the day, if what we're being told is truthful, then it should be able to easily stand up to scrutiny and questioning instead of just people getting banned and blocked and you're not allowed to talk about it. Because when you get banned and blocked and you're not allowed to talk about it, then it looks like there's got to be something to it. Especially with all the hoaxes that we've seen in the media over the years that have been exposed.
Exactly.
It makes you wonder, like, what about 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago? Everything that we were told in the news, how much of it was actually true? How much of it was actually historically accurate? Yeah,
especially if you think of countries like going to wars and propaganda, how easy it's been.
They're weapons of mass destruction. Stockpiles, warehouses full of stuff.
Yeah, that's the thing I always think about. Like all that time, money, infrastructure spent on all of those just weapons. If we actually just made that for the betterment of society, how different our world would be. That's always something that's cool to theorize.
Well, we spent a lot. Look at all the trillions of dollars we spent in Afghanistan over the last 20-something years, and now that we've left, the Taliban are still in charge, and they're stronger and more powerful and have more influence and more money than ever.
We only made the problem worse. It's literally only a worse. It's not even like. Because we lost the money, we lost lives there, it was horrible. It's just such a waste of
It
time,
just
effort.
became an incompetent grift. It's like you had
A grift. It's a
yeah,
grift.
the U.S.
Exactly.
the guys, the generals were just looking the other way, and it was status quo, rubber stamping everything, and yeah, everything's great. We're turning the corner, making huge progress, and
Well,
they just basically did a bunch of dirty deals with a mafia class of people in Afghanistan to kind of keep the country together. And which pissed a lot of people off, and that's why a lot of the people turned against the government and moved into the arms of the Taliban because they were so damn corrupt. And then now the Taliban are back.
I think it plays into
things.
think war is just profitable.
Yeah, well,
It's
the
just
defense
profitable.
industry, they got really rich.
Yeah. And once you're really rich, you're like, hey, we got to keep having things come up just so we can keep getting more rich because it's never enough. It's never like,
Got
hey,
bills to pay, got expenses.
Yeah.
Now, Kennedy did apologize. Now, the question is, do you think his apology was truthful or did it make sense?
I still
He
think it
says, I
just kind of takes
apologize for my
away
reference to Anne Frank, especially to the families that suffered the Holocaust horrors. My intention was to use examples of past barbarism to show the perils from new technologies of control. That's what I was saying earlier. I hadn't even seen that quote, but that was my assumption that that's what he was trying to say. He was trying to use an example, but it's
People
just
took it
very
the wrong way.
insensitive to refer to that. That's all.
He learned. I mean, it's...
But in this case, his wife was she was right.
Yeah, she was. Do you want to get into his
Sure, I'll get a
past,
lot
or
of
no?
fucking hate comments for that. Oh, you're on side with the woman, Corey. What's wrong with you? You become a simp. You're soft.
So what? His past?
No, his past, because he has done... for example, in 2015, he apologized after making the false claim that vaccinations cause autism and comparing it to the Holocaust.
So he's done it before.
Yeah. He's done this before.
Ah, okay. I didn't see that.
That's what I wanted to bring it first, but it was more relevant what happened and then go back to like, is it truthful, his apology? Because if he's done this back in 2015, I don't think, or does it
Maybe he
seem
doesn't
he is
remember.
sincere?
I mean, he seems like he's got Parkinson's or something. Because have you ever heard him
I think
talk?
he just uses the Holocaust as a talking point.
Yeah, a lot of people do. That's what I'm saying.
It's just kind of like
they just throw it around like the term racist. They throw that term around so much it like has no meaning anymore. People just, oh, you're a racist. Oh, yeah, whatever. Like everybody, everything is racist.
holy shit, we live in a fucked up world.
Oh, yeah.
Huh?
What happened?
Like, I'm just thinking about it. I was like, damn, we live in a messed up world. There's such like, just so
It's
much lies and
propaganda is all it
illusion.
is. You just
Dude,
repeat
there's just so many
labels over and
illusions in
over
this
and over.
world. Yeah.
The old days when you had a monopoly on media, the people could just go, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend anybody. And now with social media,
You're
it
getting
has no
attacked by
effect.
people.
The label doesn't mean anything anymore because it got so used and abused.
Yeah.
So is he
Yeah.
after seeing that? Well, if he's done it before and he did it again, he apologized. It's like the man is obviously not perfect.
No, I mean, no one's perfect.
So
but-
would I say his apology is sincere? Well, I guess it's only sincere because he got called out. But if he's already used it before and he does it again, he'll probably use it, in the future. So
A couple of years from now.
current
maybe.
events form future trends, as Gerald Salenti says, of the Trends Research Institute. So if I'm in Las Vegas and they're like, well, what would you bet, Corey? Would you bet, you got 50-50 either way. Would you bet that he'll probably use it again because he doesn't really give a shit? Because he likes the argument? Or is he really remorseful? I'd be like, I would not be willing to put money on the fact that he was really remorseful. Because if you do it over and over, he's a repeat offender.
Yeah. But he should learn his lesson because he has the public attacking him. The public is going crazy. Whether
But you could
Twitter
make the
and
argument
media.
because, like I said, when he talks, I don't know what he's got, but he sounds like he's got Parkinson's or something because his
Yeah,
voice cuts in and out. Kind of like if you ever saw Katharine Hepburn and her last 20 or 30 years she was alive, she spoke the same way and her head moved and stuff. So if maybe he's got a bad memory and he doesn't even remember using it in 2015. I don't know. I'm not
Or
a
maybe his
doctor.
wife got to remind him, hey, before you do any speeches, do not do this or do not say that.
So it's possible that he's he could say, I get a mulligan because my faculties are diminished in my elder statesmanship.
Mm.
Would you get upset if, let's say you were a public figure, Chunky,
Okay.
and your wife went in the media and called you out? Would you be like upset and like divorce her, or you would talk to her?
No, she's her own person with her own opinions, so like that's her own thing. I mean, I wouldn't.
But
I guess it more depends on the issue itself, to be honest. But I mean, if she has a disagreeing opinion, I would be like upset with that. I'd be like, I'd talk it through. I'd kind of discuss, trying to see why she has that opinion, and then just present her my argument, and then see if she doesn't see eye to eye. She doesn't see eye to eye. I'm moving on to the next thing. I don't really care, to be honest. I mean, that's just like that one day thing, because everyone kind of blows up on the one day thing, and then everyone forgets about it a week later, 3 days later. No one cares.
That's true.
So
That's what pisses me off about this. No one actually truly cares. They just pretend they care just so they get like sympathy points or like credit points. I think honestly, virtue signal. I think so many people just virtue signal just to do it because they don't. Their lives are meaningless.
Well, to me, after having gone through this, what I saw on what was in the media and what people were posting on Twitter was, oh my God, his wife didn't support him, and like, oh my God, what he said was so horrible. And then you see it, and you're like, actually, based on what I read, it's like, I think the wife was right. She should have called his ass out, because that's a healthy relationship. If you're fucking up, you should get called out by your significant other. If they're fucking up, you should call them out.
Yeah.
And in this case, because he's a repeat offender, it's like, yeah, he deserved to get called out because that was inappropriate.
Alrighty.
Okay, the jury has spoken now.
Especially online too. If you think about it, like it's just some people have some really bad hot takes on the internet. So like, who cares what they say? They're just who cares what they say? Kind of when you really think of it, they don't really have that much influence on your life. They only have the influence on your life if you really care what they say and believe into it.
Yeah, you give meaning to what they say.
Yeah, you give the power to it. It said you just. So why would I want to give power to just random strangers on the internet?
I agree with that. I think
other people's opinion of you is none of your business, as Wayne Dyer used to say.
That's true.
That was literally just their perspective, their prism, how they see life. And I bet most of these people, they lived life in a horrible prism. They just always they're always looking for the bad, something to crit. I feel like that's what they do with all facets of their life, in their relationships and their just how they interact with people. They're always in that negative kind of prison, in that mindset. They're just kind of stuck there. So I feel bad. I feel bad for them. If that's the best thing, if that's what they're doing, this is what like gives them their joy in life. Fuck, I feel bad because they got to find new things in life because they just have a bad existence. To be honest.
Maybe they also like the attention when other people support them.
Oh,
and
for
like
sure.
Like
exactly.
it, retweet it, make it popular.
Very, very smart on that. I think it's because they don't get enough attention in their life, so this is how they get it. They feel meaningless in their lives because we live in an age where everything's really done. It's kind of hard to do new things. A lot of people that's why so many people are depressed, to be honest. You're always shown 24/7, oh, look how good this person's life is. You're always comparing, subconsciously, you're always comparing yourself to these other people, the internet personas and
which
shit.
Is all bullshit anyway.
It's all fake stuff anyway. Yeah. Precisely. So in their heads, this is the only way they can get meaning.
Yeah, they're on social media trying to convince the world how great their lives are. But if their lives were that great, they'd be living them.
Yeah, they'd be immersed in it. They wouldn't be dealing with this stuff. And I think that's one of the biggest problems facing us nowadays that we have to change.
It's like people that are not happy are always on social media trying to convince everybody how happy and great their lives are. Or people that are talking about how great their marriage is or their relationship, and they're on all over social media bragging about it. And then next, they're getting divorced. Oh.
And
then you find out what was really going on behind the scenes. It's like, damn.
Yeah, it's all just personas. It's just fakeness.
They were trying to convince themselves.
I think that's where discernment.
That's why they're all over the internet, vomiting everywhere, and pointing their finger at everybody else who's not living the way they are, as if there's something wrong with them.
Going back to the conspiracy theorist thing too. I think this is important for anything you receive from the mainstream or anything that's labeled as a conspiracy theory. It doesn't matter. Just whatever that idea is, just take that single event and then you question it yourself, and then see if you believe it and think it's realistic, and then you believe it, not what someone else says about it.
Yeah, I like that he questions authority, but I don't like the fact that he's done shit like this before and apologized.
Oh
and he
yeah,
does
yeah.
it again.
I'm
'Cause that
kind
makes
of leaving
that tells
from
me
this. I'm not.
that tells me he's a liar, and so therefore you can't really trust his character.
Yeah, I'm definitely.
Unless he's mentally diminished.
I'm talking on a different vein. I'm not really focusing on this part as much as this guy.
I'm making I'm
Yeah,
using it
you're
as an
tying it back,
example
yeah.
for a person's character.
That's true. Okay, I see what you did.
Because that's
there.
important. Because character is destiny. You look what people do, not what they say. If you have somebody that does something, says they're sorry, and then they do it again, they apologize for it again. If it's
a pattern.
if they repeatedly do it, then you go, if it happens again, I'm going, that guy is definitely full of shit. And so everything they say from that point forward, then you have to assume it's suspect.
Very sus.
Exactly. Question everything. Don't take everything at face value. That's the point I was trying to get across. All right, let's get back to this.
Yeah, because when I'm on Twitter and shit happens where this happened, their track record's pretty good on news and stuff, and then some bullshit comes along, and then you follow the trail, do a little research, and then you figure out it was bullshit. And it's like a lot of times I'll just unfollow that fucker or I'll mute them and I won't see their shit anymore. Because it's like you gotta follow people that are consistently right, or almost always right, and then when they are wrong, they tell you that they were wrong.
Admit it that they're wrong. Correct. Yeah. I think a lot of people don't like to admit they're wrong.
So after we went through
yeah,
that
they
thing,
hold on to their egos.
You kind of enlightened me as to what really happened because you researched it and you got the actual quotes.
Yeah.
And so the perception that was in the media, because all media's narrative, was different than the actual facts.
Mm-hmm. When I researched it and I found out that he did it before, that was surprising.
It's like a rage and an inflammatory headline. They're like, what? He said what?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm mad. And then you read it and you're like, it's really not that big a deal. Or you read her stuff and you're like, oh, she did the right thing. He's done this before.
Keeping track.
Now I'll know next time he says something. I'm like, I don't know if that's
Remember
right.
back in 2022?
I'll be less inclined to believe him. That's the important thing as a self-reliant human being that we should make the distinction of. Who can you trust? Who do you believe?
I honestly trust myself. That's it. I don't
That's
trust
who you
anyone
should
else.
trust. Wayne Dyer, one of my favorite quotes, he says, when you trust in yourself, you're trusting in the same wisdom that created you.
Correct.
And got you this far in life.
Yes.
Oh, that's true. And another thing to trust, maybe your parents, if anything.
Yeah.
I think they're your number one supporters.
Well, when you're real young, you trust everything your parents say. And then as you get older, like when I was in middle school, that's when I started to go, what my mom's been telling me is not really accurate. What Dad said at dinner the other night, like, nah, that's kind of bullshit. And then you start to take what they say with a grain of salt, and then you get around 12, 13, and you start expressing your personality, and you want to push back, and then you get more pushback from your parents. Then you become a rebellious teenager, and then you go, oh, okay, well, I just won't tell them that because that creates a little bit of friction, and the next thing they know, it's like you don't really know each other. Because you can't have an honest conversation without them trying to impose their will. So just they don't know, then they're not trying to impose their will on you.